So everyone, while you join us, if you could throw in the chat where you're joining us from and what you're sipping on, we would love that. All right.
Hey, Ross. Thanks for joining.
San Francisco.
Hi, everyone. Excited to be here.
Yeah. Let's see. We have San Francisco, White Claw Mango.
Yes.
I just did a bike ride, so I'm a bit unrefined at the moment, but I'll catch up.
All right. All right. We have Tome Hazy IPA from Chicago. That's fun. Taryn's joining from Boston. Taryn, are you sipping on anything? Ooh, Golden State Cider. Nice. Glad we have a cider drinker with us.
Oh, and the little one too.
Getting started early with the cider. I love it.
Brian, how's it going? Thanks for joining us.
All right. We have a good quorum here, I feel like. So let's get started. So yeah, as everyone joins, if you didn't hear when we said, we'd love to know where you're joining us from and what you're sipping on. So we wanted to kind of kick off and hi Ned. We wanted to kick off and talk a little bit first about why we're doing these. So one of the obvious reasons, obviously, is we're all kind of stuck in this social distancing new norm. And we thought that it would be a great way for us all to connect and connect over a shared passion.
You guys are all here because you like booze and we like booze.
We like booze. Right.
Thanks for being here.
Is your audio disconnected? I'm hearing a little feedback. But yeah, so we thought it would be a great way to connect Tippler Nation, as I affectionately call my Crafty Cask people who love craft alcohol, and also support craft makers, because while, you know, this is impacting all of us in very different ways, we're both part of the craft alcohol community, and we're really seeing, you know, my clients who are craft makers losing their entire client base because people can't come visit them and can't buy and try and taste and drink with them. And then,
as you can imagine, wine tours have completely evaporated. Nobody's traveling in any capacity, and the wineries are closed by and large. So this is something that we are pretty excited about because who knows how long we're going to be in this situation, and we figured this is a great way to include you know, our love of these various producers and bring you guys into our passion and let you know what we're drinking and what we're wanting to support and
support the craft makers. So our whole goal with these is to give craft makers, and we have right now, we have Ned here and Anne. If you can wave, Anne's video isn't working right now, but so Ned and Anne are two of our craft makers who are joining us live tonight. So we're super excited to have them here. And our whole goal with bringing in our craft makers is to expose them to a bigger, broader audience. So Ned is getting access to Anne's audience from Ragged Hill. Anne is getting access to Ned's audience from Ethic Cider. And then they're both getting access to our audience from Max Napa Tours and the Crafty Cask. And so the goal is to just get better exposure. And if you like what you hear, you like what you see, you want to buy some bottles, a lot of times our craft makers will be offering special discounts and free shipping or discounted shipping, things like that, to help you support them and get booze while you are sheltering in place. And honestly, we are hoping that these are fun enough and big enough and we build enough community while we're all hunkered down that we want to keep doing them far into the future and keep doing this so we can have virtual happy hours even when we are allowed to hang out in bars and restaurants together again. So brief introductions. I'm Suzanne, for those of you who don't know me, because we do not know everyone on the call today, which we're super excited about.
Yay, hi new people.
And so I'm Suzanne. I am the founder of the Crafty Cask, whose mission is all about supporting craft alcohol makers. That is what we do day in and day out. And we do that by creating great content for consumers to help bust some of those myths, like gin tastes like Christmas trees or cider is girly and sweet and not for me, right? So we're trying to bust those myths to expand palates. And then we also work with craft makers directly to teach them marketing and provide marketing services and marketing support so that they can get their name out and their brand out more fully.
And I'm Evan. I've been supporting craft wine producers for almost 10 years now. And even before that, you know, the background I have in the wine business was restaurants before what I I've been doing for the last 10 years with Max Napa Tours, which is doing wine tours, I was always, even back then, it was really about the small boutique wines that you weren't going to be finding everywhere. And more recently, in a more personal and a more intimate way, I've been supporting small craft producers by bringing tours to their wineries and exposing them, because I lock the doors and they can't get out of the car. They're going to the place I'm bringing them, whether they like it or not. So yeah, Suzanne's broad approach and in my focused approach, we thought this would be a fun way to kind of have them both come together.
And we've both, I don't know about you guys, give us a thumbs up or something if you've been to a lot of virtual happy hours in the past week or two, more so than we ever thought we would. Yeah, exactly. And they're super fun and we love the ones we've been to, but we also find that they leave a little something to be desired sometimes. And so we were trying to figure out how can we bring some education and entertainment to the happy hour kind of approach. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Aspirational.
Yes. So let's go through just a couple of quick things, house rules, and a few tech helpful tips for those of us who are a little bit newer to Zoom so that we can all speak and talk, because while right now it's just Evan and I talking, we don't want that to be the way. We don't want it to be a one-directional conversation. So house rules, engage, interact, have fun. Like I said, we don't want this to feel one-directional. So we'll talk about how to jump in and unmute yourself and do all that in a second when I talk about tech. Let's all be kind and courteous. We love debate and dissent, so we're totally cool with that.
I don't like it at all.
I love it. And so we're totally cool if you want to debate things, if you don't agree with something, totally cool, but let's respect each other. And of course, there is zero tolerance for hate speech, bullying, or degrading comments or anything of that nature.
No name calling, Corbin.
Don't want to talk over each other, so that's why we start everyone on mute, but we do want everyone to be heard. So leverage Evan and I as your hosts to make sure we know when you have something to say. You can either raise your hand, and so if you're not familiar how to do that, there is, let me get into my thing here. If you go to more, you can see participants, and yeah, and so you can see participants, and so that's a fun thing too, because you can actually see the names of all the participants if you do that. And then beneath there, there's things like yes, no, go slower, go faster, and there's also a way to raise your hand. And that's the best way to get our attention, to say, hey, I have something to say, let me in for a minute. So if you want to raise your hand, you can just do that, or you can put a comment in the, but my screen doesn't look like their screen since I'm the host, is the problem.
Yeah.
But basically, so you can raise your hand, and also just chatting. So chatting in there directly is fine. If you really want to get our attention, you can chat to one of us directly, and it will just come to Suzanne, or it will just go to Evan, and then we'll see it a little bit more readily. But that's the way to get in. And as soon as we see that you've raised your hand or you've asked a question, we'll make sure to get you over there and tell you to unmute yourself and jump in.
Yeah, we'll circle back around, and Suzanne is a bit more of a talker than I am, if you haven't gathered. So I'll be kind of paying closer attention to who's got their hand raised, and
we'll see who's paying more attention.
Kind of push her aside for a second and say, "Hey,
yes, please do.
Got a comment.
Please do. I have so much to say all the time." So then, tech helpful tips. If you're on a phone, totally works fine. Computer is usually the best experience with Zoom and with these types of things, just so you know. Gallery view is our recommended approach. So at the top right, you can click gallery view, and then you get to see more people and everyone's faces instead of just seeing our big faces and a few people at the top. So that tends to be a little more fun, and you can kind of scroll through and see everyone else. More to the bottom right is where you can see the names of all participants and raise your hand. Like I said, chat box to the right, engage with others, keep things lively. We love that. And then feel free to chat with people you know on here directly. If you have friends on here, you can chat with them directly and chit chat kind of behind the scenes as well. And then we'll be sharing some visuals as we go through this, especially as Ned and Anne are talking about their cideries and talking about what they do. And so don't feel the need, if there's anything that you want to screen capture, we're going to be sending out some things afterwards.
Yeah, we'll be in touch with some more
details and all that good stuff. And then for those of you who want to show support, and if you could throw the links in the chat maybe, Evan, sure. You'll have an opportunity to buy some of their amazing cider with some special offers that they have as a way to kind of show your support. If you like what you hear and you think what we're sipping on and what we're explaining and what we're describing sounds delicious, you'll be able to get it yourself as well. So Evan's going to throw a couple of links in the chat bar there that tells you about their promotions and also how you can buy online. And then we hate to even say this, but if you have a fabulous time and you want to tip your hosts, you can do that via Venmo. And so our Venmo is at the Crafty Cask. You know, we're doing these for free right now, and we're hoping that we're going to be able to keep them free for consumers, and that they're valuable enough for our makers that we can work something out where it makes sense for us to make a little money off of this as well, because honestly, both of our livelihoods have just disappeared kind of overnight with this whole thing too.
Michelle, I'm not sure if these two producers ship to Illinois.
But they do ship pretty broadly because they're usually under winemaker licenses or like those rules. So I think Ned and Ann, maybe you can jump in if you ship to Illinois, you can kind of jump in there. But yeah.
Yeah, we ship to, I think, 36 states. I think we're under Vino shipper. So they get us everywhere. It's been amazing this week. So thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Love it. Awesome. All right. Enough with the details. Let's talk cider. Evan, do you want to talk? So Evan recently, so he's a certified sommelier, which is going to be part of the fun of these tasting experiences, but he just recently became a certified cider professional.
Certified cider professional, and hoping to see in the coming weeks. They said it would take roughly 8 weeks to find out if I was actually going to be a certified sommelier.
Yes.
It was a long format test with lots of writing, and my hand was cramping by the end of it. So time will tell.
Yeah.
I felt moderately confident with the content.
But the first year they did the certified sommelier exam, I think there was like an 8% pass rate or something ridiculous like that. So
it was.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We didn't know that when he took it.
In fact, the story that somebody told was that if they met someone, or they knew someone that took the test and they passed the tasting portion and the knowledge portion, but failed the test overall.
Which is impossible for those of us who understand how tests work.
Math says no.
So yeah. But anyways, so maybe he'll be a certified sommelier soon.
Yeah, with any luck. So yeah, I guess kind of just to get started.
Oh wait, and I had a poll. Let's see. I'm launching a poll for you guys to take because we're curious before we even start talking about cider, what your relationship with cider is. So let us know if you love it, like it, you're not sure, or you currently think it's not for you. And now, go ahead.
Sorry, that link I just sent was kind of broken. Sorry. There we go. So cider's been around for ages. In the United States, it was at one point basically a form of currency. It was so rampant, and it was such a commonly consumed and enjoyed beverage that people literally used it to barter for everyday goods and even bigger purchases, like a horse, perhaps. The landscape of the United States used to be covered with apple trees, and the apples that were used back then to make cider, and the apples that in many cases are still used today to make hard cider, are very different apples than what we commonly tend to think of as an apple. You know, you think of an apple, most people think of a, perfectly uniform color, red, delicious apple. That's like, hey, what do you got there? Haley, is that, hey,
what's that?
Exactly.
You're eating apples, right? Those are the apples.
Those kind of apples.
The snacking apples, the baking apples, the things that are kind of more sweet and delicious.
And they're starkly different from cider apples. Cider apples, curiously enough, have about the same amount of sugar as those eating apples, but they have far more acidity and far more astringency. Biting into them,
and tannins, right? Like wine, similar to wine, so tannic.
Biting into one of them, it feels like you left an aspirin on your tongue, and not pleasant. And due to industrialization and prohibition primarily, but as people moved to the city centers and they traded labor for actual cash money instead of farming and bartering, the shift moved away from cider. And actually cider apples were ripped up by decree, and a lot of these old apple orchards no longer exist. But you know, the way that everything ebbs and flows, cider is seeing a really cool resurgence. And you know, personally, I was drawn to it. I was exposed to it, introduced to it by Suzanne. She's a big cider lover, and I came to appreciate it because of her, and recognized that there's a lot of really cool similarities between wine, which, you know, is my first passion, due to the variety and the diversity of these unique cider apples that exist, and the fact that a lot of ciders taste different because of the apples that are used, whereas with beer, it's usually more what they do with the base ingredients than what the base ingredients are, although they have, of course, some influence. Yeah, I guess, as I said before, I was so inspired, I decided to take a couple of ridiculous tests. So yeah, I guess that's kind of a brief, simple, broad overview.
Ooh, sorry. Knocking over the table.
Earthquake. Just kidding.
Yeah, and I guess my, so I'm just gonna throw the myth out there, which Ned and Anne, you guys can jump in and say, because I know a lot of cider makers are like, please stop talking about this, but I do think it's a small part of the whole cider history was the piece of prohibition. And I don't think it has the whole reason for why cider fell off in, you know, popularity, but, you know, during prohibition, people couldn't drink. And since cider was so popular, they did rip up a lot of these old apple trees, these old heirloom apple trees. And so these cider making apples that were primarily used just for cider, they're not good for baking, they're not good for eating, kind of disappeared from our landscape for a while. And so when prohibition ended and people maybe wanted to start thinking about making cider again, they didn't have the apples that they needed to make the cider that we used to love and now that we're starting to get back in love again. And so that's why, if you think back to like the 90s when Angry Orchard was like coming on the scene, and Crispin and all those ones, they were super sticky, sweet, like Jolly Rancher-y ciders, because they were making them all 100%, you know, from these kind of snacking, baking apples, and also because the American palate at that time was really into sugary sweet things as well.
Sure.
But now the American palate has changed a little bit, and we like sour beers and orange wines and all these funky weird things. And a lot of people, and I know both Ned and Anne can talk to this quite a bit, a lot of people have really invested a lot of time and energy in replanting and refinding and going out and foraging these old heirloom apple trees and bringing them back into our environment so that we have these amazing heirloom apples to start to use to make cider as well. So yeah.
Why don't you share with them a little bit about your first experience with cider? Because I think that's a fascinating story. Really cool.
Yeah, so I am like a deep in my soul, like cider lover, but here, I'll share this actually. So this was recently, but when I was 19, I studied abroad in San Sebastian, Spain. And so I was only 19, and so you can't drink in the US at that point, you know. And so when I was over there, in San Sebastian, cider is huge over there, and I got to go to a traditional cideria. And this is kind of what the situation looks like. Ooh. And so they have these giant casks, and you actually don't even usually kind of pour it yourself. You'll stand all the way across the room and catch it in your cup. And so that was one of my very first, when I was 19 years old, you know, that was one of my very first craft alcohol experiences, where I was just like in this room and I was like, what is this thing? And what is happening? This is so freaking cool. And then I tasted it, and, you know, I'm thinking cider, like New England apple cider that's sweet and not alcoholic at all. And I taste it, and it's kind of cheesy and funky and barnyardy, and I was just amazed. And from that moment on, I was totally in love with cider. And then I came back to the United States, and that's when Crispin and Angry Orchard and all those big brands were getting really big with cider, and they were so different. They were like I said, like drinking a Jolly Rancher. And so I was really disappointed, and I actually like turned off cider for about 5 years or so, until these amazing craft makers started to kind of come in and make these ciders that were more like what I knew from San Sebastian, Spain. And so that's where my deep history of cider and deep love of cider comes from. Yeah. Ned, Anne, do you guys want to jump in at all and talk a little bit about just generally cider or apples or anything like that before we kind of move into your segments? You can just unmute yourselves if you do.
No, go ahead. I mean, I think you're doing a great job. Keep going.
Cool. Ned, anything
Yeah.
from you? I know you do a lot of work here.
Moving. I think it's great history and background. We're looking forward to some questions later about what people
Cool.
want to hear, but great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think when we get to it, definitely jump in because Ned and Anne, Ned does a lot of work with regenerative agriculture, and really both of their philosophies for Ragged Hill cider and Ethic ciders are really all about like this orchard based and like getting the taste of the apple into your glass and not really trying to manipulate it or over manipulate it, and really like, and Ned's done a lot of work to help bring back some of these heirloom apples that have disappeared from our landscape. So he does a lot of really cool stuff, and I'm sure he'll talk a little bit about that when we get there, which I think.
Well, let's go around just briefly.
Yeah, good idea.
Is anybody drinking cider right now?
There's a few who said in there.
And what are you drinking? If you're drinking cider,
Tell
just
us what you're
unmute
drinking.
yourself and let us know what you're drinking. Hey, Ragged Hill, what do you know? some support there. Anyone else?
Yeah, nothing great. I just went and picked up some reds. Does that count?
Made from apples.
It is made from
Right.
apple.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Is it?
we have craft over here. We just have, whatever is in the store. So I'm actually excited to see what it's going to end up with this whole
Cool.
party.
Well, thanks for coming, and thanks for grabbing some cider to join us with the sentiment.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Laura,
I see
what
an
do you got
Aspal.
there? Oh, Aspal. Cool.
That's an English cider. Yeah. What do you think of that? Unmute yourself, Laura. Laura, you're on mute. Hold on. We can unmute you.
Here.
I got it.
It looks good though, right? I don't know.
Laura, start again. You were on mute. Tell us what you just said.
I said we have not opened this, but I'd like to. I'm late to the party. I didn't know it was a cider party, but we've got a little bit of cider in our closet. So
Nice.
I'll
cool.
get back to you on that. I just wanted to show it to you because it's a beautiful bottle, right?
Yeah.
Very pretty.
I've had Aspal from England, and it's pretty good. Oh, Patrick,
Okay.
tell us about Son of Man. I've had that as well. I think we might have one here,
Yeah, I
actually.
believe so.
Yeah, it's the first time we tried it, but we picked it up today.
Ooh, that looks good.
Caught my eye because it's a Basque style cider from Oregon, but it's wild spontaneous fermentation, and it recommended pouring from a height, so I figured it was legit. And so far, it's pretty tasty.
Nice.
Like it a lot. We actually forgot to pour our first one from height, but we have the proper glasses for it. So.
Yeah, so Patrick and his girlfriend Kristen there, she has the traditional glass too. So they joined me 2 summers ago. I went back to San Sebastian, Spain and Gijón, Spain to really do some cider research and really hang out there and get immersed in the cider culture for about 2 months. And Patrick and Kristen joined me for Patrick. Gosh, you joined me for maybe 3 weeks or so, 4 weeks. And then, that's our glass, our special glass.
These things are crazy. This weighs like, I don't know, one gram. The glass is paper thin. And one of the more fascinating stories that Suzanne shared with me is that there was a period of time, I guess, that glass was so expensive, and that's the reason why the glass was so thin, that they would just have one glass for a whole group of people, and they would pour, and it's just like a tiny little amount.
Just a little bit, because it's not carbonated, but it has a lot of volatile acid in it. And so you actually pour it from a very tall height, so it hits the side of the glass and like breaks and kind of makes it a little carbonated quickly. So you only want a little bit and you chug it down.
And if you sit there with it in your hand for too long, the person standing next to you gives you a little bump because he needs the glass to pour himself some. And so the same bottle and the same glass are just passed around a group of like 6 or 7 people until the bottle's empty, and then they open another one, but there's only one glass the whole time.
It's the exact opposite of social distancing. And it's interesting because they still actually to this day, so when we were in Gijón, we would go to a cider bar and we would, go in. And so you actually pay a little bit of money for the glass, and you pay also a little bit of money for the cider because it's as cheap as water there. And then if you return the glass, you get your money back. So they take a little deposit. And so I don't think it's because glass is so expensive there anymore. It's just kind of part of the tradition. So even today, when you're there, groups of friends are sharing one glass and passing them around as they're drinking. So it's a really fun and unique and different culture over there.
Max, I see that you're drinking Coturri cider. Very cool.
I like Coturri.
Yeah, we opened that bottle the other day. It was really fun. And Steve, I understand that you've had it as well. That's cool because I don't feel like that's something that's readily available. Max, I'm gonna unmute you here so you can tell us a little bit about what
I need to mix it.
oh, I'm sorry. Just a second. There you go.
Yeah, what are you thinking of Coturri?
It's wonderful. It's totally cloudy.
Unfiltered? No.
The bottle's a shiner. Every time I open one, I lose like a quarter of it to like explodes. It probably happened to you too. I gotta warn people about that. They come from the Gravenstein apple trees on his yard. In his yard, he has like 80 of them. So I don't know. He makes enough to sell a little bit of it, but I think it's pretty rare. I don't know. I love that.
Coturri is a winery that you guys.
It's the first time I've ever bought cider before, like from a producer. Yeah, no, I liked it.
Yeah, I understood it
enjoyed
was
it too.
super rare too, which is why I was so like it's really cool that Steve, you've had it before, but I guess
Yeah.
I'm not as surprised given that you have connections in the cider industry.
Yeah, my friend Joe sells it at the Slanted Door, so yeah, you can get it there. I mean that's how I got it in.
Nice.
And that's how I discovered it. Yeah,
Cool.
I said it's the first time I've ever bought more than one bottle of cider at a time.
Nice.
I don't even
Hopefully
think about
we-
doing that with wine or beer. Obviously, well, beer I have to, but yeah, I'm loving them. You got like 5
Good.
left.
Nice.
Well, hopefully we introduce you to some more cider makers tonight that you want to try and
Yeah.
buy because there's some great ones here too. And it sounds like Anne is saying too that they love Coturri as well.
So the question popped up here. I don't want to call the person out, but
She won't mind.
why does cider make me feel bloaty and farty?
And I would say my initial reaction to that was like, really? Because I feel like that's the opposite. And that's why a lot of people actually first get introduced to cider
Yeah.
is because they feel like beer makes them that way. And they're looking for something that is effervescent and light and refreshing
But
and lower
gluten-free,
ABV
especially in this day
that
and
won't
age,
make
yeah.
them feel that way. And usually that's the case with cider. So
I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe it's just the carbonation head.
Yeah, maybe just carbonation in general is not your thing.
Who knows?
That's a really good point. I appreciate that.
Excellent.
So
All right, I think we're ready to jump into our makers.
Yeah.
Also I did want to mention though, if anyone wants to geek out with us, so I'm a market researcher by trade, and I like to geek out a little bit. And Evan does too, because he's a little geeky as well. But we emailed all of you, so in your reminder 2 hours ago, there's a cider tasting mat there. And so especially if you're drinking cider, if you want to kind of use it to track kind of what you're thinking about your cider and how you think it tastes and how you think the effervescence is and the essences as we're talking through the ciders we're drinking, it's kind of fun. And we'll throw the attachment into the chat window as well. So if you didn't get that email for some reason, if you registered kind of at the last minute.
it looks like this.
Yeah. So when I do live Meet the Maker events,
Ned's
Ned
got
has his, nice. Yeah, Ned knows. Ned's done some live Meet the Maker events with me. And so when we do live Meet the Maker events, we always have these and we give people different colored pens so that they can put multiple ciders on one chart. And that's really fun because that helps you really identify, gosh, I loved that cider. I didn't love this one as much. Why is that? And you can start to see the differences and the similarities between the ciders and what it is about it that you love and what it is about it that you didn't love so much. And so that can be kind of a fun way to be a little more interactive while we're going through this stuff, especially since you're not all drinking what we're drinking, which hopefully in the future, as we get our calendar built out, we'll be able to tell you weeks in advance what we're doing and you can order the things you're excited about and drink right along with us, which would be awesome. All right. So I think next up, we were going to move over to Ragged Hill. And so I'm super excited to have Ragged Hill here. I first got introduced to Ragged Hill Cider Company 2 years ago now. I came home to go to this amazing festival called Franklin County Cider Days in Massachusetts. And for those of you who don't know, I'm from Massachusetts, so it's a fun excuse for me to get home and see the parents. But as I drove out to it, someone had mentioned to me Ragged Hill Cider Company, that I'd be driving right by it and I should go check it out. And so, you know, I went there, I met Anne, I met Steve, we got to hang out and go in their orchard, and it's really amazing. They're an award-winning orchard-based craft cidery, and they specialize in small batch heritage style ciders made using all traditional methods with no added sugar. And so all the apples are grown, picked, pressed, fermented, and bottled on site where they are. So they do it soup to nuts, the whole thing they're doing. They're 100% solar powered as well. And they're in West Brookfield, Massachusetts. And so I'm really excited to have Anne here. They make amazing ciders. And Anne, I would love it if you could jump on and tell us a little bit about your story and where this all started from and what your kind of ethos is and all that good stuff.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. And thanks to Susan and Evan for having us. I've been having so many virtual happy hours these days, so this just sort of feels like the new norm. So this is great. So we're in central Massachusetts. We're small, owner operated. It's my father, Steve, and I, and our third partner is Keith, who owns the orchard. We're an orchard-based cidery, so we grow all of the fruit that we're pressing. We don't buy juice or concentrates or anything like that. We're growing 100% of the fruit that we're pressing and fermenting. And we do have 100% solar powered orchard and cidery, and our orchard uses IPM, which is integrated pest management methods, which is a lower spray, not organic, but a lower spray and sustainable method. So we're doing really traditional ciders with minimal intervention. Again, no added sugar. We do really low, slow fermentations. We press, oh, there I am.
There she is.
We press during harvest. So we're pressing fresh apples during harvest and then fermenting them over the winter through the spring. Our earliest ciders would be released in late spring, early summer, and then some go for longer, for a year or two even. Yeah, so do we want to talk about what we're tasting, or
yeah, so Evan and I are drinking the traditional dry. Here, we'll put this up here so you guys can see it. Let's move it back a little bit maybe.
So this is our flagship cider. This is the first cider that we ever made, our traditional dry. It's a really light, crisp cider with a nice bright acidity, no sugar added. It has flavors of green apple and citrus on the nose. I would liken it the most to a dry Prosecco or a champagne style.
Totally.
So this is made with a blend of apples, Baldwin, Cortland's, McIntosh, and Empires. So this orchard that we've partnered with, Ragged Hill Orchard, was primarily eating apples that you're familiar with, a lot of older traditional New England types. But when we got involved with the orchard about 6 years ago, we convinced them to start planting heritage cider varieties. So we've actually gotten those first apples this past fall, and we're fermenting those now for our first heritage blend. So those are apples like Roxbury Russet, Golden Russet, Dabinet. We've got some Ashmead's Kernel, and we've got a sort of a smattering of different interesting crab apples to play with too, and to add complexity and tannins.
Awesome. Yeah, and it is, Evan, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the kind of profile as our resident sommelier with the expert's palate. I can tell you what I think, but.
You know, it's funny because as you were finishing that, I took my first sip and I just kind of like did a double take and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I remember this one was kind of starkly different from a lot of ciders in that capacity where it's very focused and boy, yeah. I mean, the the way the acidity kind of like puckers you, but it's got that astringency that kind of polishes and soaks the saliva up essentially when the acidity hits your palate and makes you kind of your salivary glands go crazy. Wow, yeah, and this is fun to get to revisit. I'm so happy that you're here. And we have an excuse to open this bottle.
I know.
And my father, Steve, is the cider maker. So if he wants to chime in on any notes about it or anything he wants to say, unmute yourself and say something, Dad.
He was in our picture earlier. Let's see if we can go back. There we go.
Unmute himself.
Oh, here.
Here, we'll unmute him.
There we go.
Right there. There you go.
Oh,
I first started drinking cider as a teenager, working on a local dairy farm, and the farmer had some apple trees, and he had a local guy press his apples every fall, and he always had a barrel of apple cider in the basement. And when we would come in after haying, which is hot, heavy, itchy work, and he would let us teenagers drink cider down in his basement. So that's my earliest memory of cider, and that has always stuck with me as to like how refreshing and invigorating it was to drink cider on a hot day after working all day. And the cider that the old farmers made around here was always was never completely fermented, so it was always kind of fizzy, and it could be maybe slightly sweet, or it could be a little bit funkier and more vinegarier, but it was always good. And so that's how it came to cider making after I made beer and wine at home for many years. And I used to always think about cider and think about those hot days drinking cider in a cool basement. So that's kind of the experience that I'm always trying to get out of cider. And also that's why cider to me always has bubbles in it. And I'd be really interested to hear how people feel about that, because there's a lot of still ciders. There's a lot of ciders that are carbonated. There's pet nat ciders, but to me, the bubbles are really part of the cider experience, because that's how I remember it, and that's why Tony Couturi makes a great pet nat cider. Yeah, and that's we're coming out with a pet nat cider a little bit later this year, and we're really going in that direction of drier ciders, but that have a lot of flavor to them because of the apples. As Ann said, we're gradually replanting in cider varieties, which add a lot of depth and complexity to the ciders. You combine that with a pet nat or ancestral style fermentation that gives it the secondary bubbles, and that's what Tony Couturi does, and it's a tremendous way to make cider. And
and it's interesting your thought on still versus sparkling. It's funny, so when Patrick and I were in Gijón, Spain, and we were watching everyone pour from this height, and it's a very like dramatic kind of showy thing. Every restaurant you go to, every bar you go to, everywhere you turn your head, there's someone standing up doing this very dramatic like pour. And so and we knew it was to kind of break the acids and kind of like get a little bit of effervescence. but when we bought some bottles to bring home, and we were kind of like, is that really necessary? Like, I don't know, like maybe it's just like theatrical. And so when we got home, and also, you know, we're not experts at this, so we didn't want to make a mess all over the place we were living in. And so we tried some, and we were like, let's just pour it normal and try it. And the experience was completely different without any bubble or without any effervescence. And like, it was still fine, but it wasn't like, and so then we understood, like, no, that's the reason. It looks very theatrical and it looks very dramatic, but it is like those bubbles and that effervescence. You know, I kind of agree. There are some still ciders out there that I found that I love, but it's a very different experience, and it's not really where my brain goes to when I'm thinking I'm in the mood for cider. But yeah, so that's an interesting piece to it.
Hey, Steve, we had a question that came through here. Somebody was wondering, and I think I know the answer, but are cider apples used to make brandy the way that apples are used to make Calvados? Or I guess more specifically, are the apples that are used to make Calvados the same apples that are used in France to make cider?
Yes, yes. So Calvados starts as cider.
Right.
I mean, that's, yeah. So, but the apples that they have in France are, you know, are French apples, and they have their own combination of varieties, and they aren't necessarily what grows real well here in New England. So our soil here in New England, or in our region, is a glacial till soil. So it's full of rocks and sand. It's not especially limey. It's not limestone soil, which is really, so that's the traditional Calvados region in France is a limestone soil, and the apples that grow there thrive on that. Here in our region, we have apples that grow well in this type of soil, which is a decomposed granite. Really, it's a more acid soil than the limestone soil. So my favorite apple right here in this region is Roxbury Russet, which was this is the quintessential American apple. It was brought over by the Pilgrims, basically, brought over as seeds. So they lucked out. They planted the seeds. It turned out to be a good apple. We're about 60 miles west of Roxbury, where these trees came from.
Very cool.
They grow just fantastically in this soil. It's a terrific cider apple. You know, everybody talks about Kingston Black. You know, you read the cider literature, and it's almost this. There's this mythos of Kingston Black it's the perfect cider apple. It's got everything. It's got acid. It's got tannins. It's got sugars. Well, Kingston Black doesn't grow very well around here, but the Roxbury Russet is
shines.
This is the perfect apple for the soils that we have, for the climate that we have, and it's the backbone of where we're headed. The Roxbury Russet is going to be the core of all our future ciders, and we'll use the other varieties to tinker around with the flavor profiles, with the acids and the tannins. But
cool.
Roxbury Russet is really our thing.
That's amazing. Yeah, I can't wait to keep tasting the new things that you guys are making. And I do we need to move on to Ethic in a minute, but I want to just mention they do also have a semi-dry that is a little bit sweeter than their traditional dry, and their rosé. And the rosé is really pretty fun. So Anne or Steve, I don't know if you want to take a minute to talk about the rosé, since that is unique. And I know, people in Massachusetts get really excited about it when you guys release it. So maybe one of you can tell us a little bit about that rosé since it is kind of unique.
Well, the rosé is made with our own raspberries. We also raise raspberries at the orchard. And so it has a very
beautiful red color.
Very fresh essence of raspberries. Now, it's not overwhelming. It's not like raspberry soda, but it has the real character of raspberries, which are quite tannic, really. Raspberries have a lot of tannins, not that much sweetness to it. But it goes really well with apples. So everybody really likes it. It's been a tremendous success for us.
Yeah, and we really love it here, especially when the weather gets a little warmer. It's just so what I love about it is it has some nice sweetness to it, but it's so tart too. And just like raspberries are, right? Like raspberries have that like super tart, but also a little sweet, and like they're just balanced perfectly. Yes. And it's really refreshing and really fun, and just one of our favorite bottles to open whenever we do. So yeah, it's a fun one.
Great.
Just briefly, before we move over to Ned, I want
Chaka had his hand raised.
Yeah, I want
Chaka, did you want to say something? Can we unmute you? And I'm trying to unmute, but it's not letting me.
Here.
I think you have to do it from the.
Oh.
Chaka, unmute yourself so we can hear your.
I think it was an accidental hand raise.
Oh, okay. That's all right.
Sorry about that. How do I get it back?
We'll lower your hand for you. We'll lower your hand for you. You do
Thank
that.
you.
Well, I'm also going to unmute. Steve, you're not the only parent here. My parents are here as well. And my dad just had a little anecdote that I want him to share. If I can put you on the spot, Dad.
Mom.
Oh, it was
Mom. It was Mom.
All right. Well, tell us what you have.
What I just said, Steve, was that I, like you, when we were kids, we would go to our grandmother's in Cumberland, Maryland, in the Allegheny Mountains, and we would have the apple cider. And as the days went by, it kept getting, I guess, well, for us being kids, maybe not better, but we felt really different each day. Increasingly, we were gaining some other elements, and so we started off early, getting a little tipsy.
Didn't realize that it was fermenting.
We were nipping early.
That explains a lot, Kristen. It explains a lot. All right. Well, Anne and Steve, thank you so much for being here. And again, we'll throw the link and the promotional code as well, because there's a promotional code to get $15 shipping when you buy 6 bottles or more, which is great because that's one of the downsides of booze is that, it's heavy and so it's expensive to ship. So yeah, so if you like what you see, if you do buy some stuff from Ragged Hill, I strongly encourage you to also buy a little bit of the rosé, even though we're not drinking it tonight and we're not talking as much about it because it's just super fun and super unique and kind of different. And if you buy 6 bottles, you get $15 shipping, which is awesome. So Ned, I want to kind of throw it over to you, but first let me talk a little about, so Ethic Ciders, I first experienced Ethic, honestly, at the Good Food Awards tasting a few years ago. So they won some medals and they were being showcased as one of the winners. And that was the first time I got to try their ciders. And I was kind of like, what is this? This is different. This is amazing. And one of them, Evan always says really reminds him of champagne very similarly to this traditional dry. And so that was my first introduction to Ethic Ciders. I was trying to remember today, I was talking to Evan and I was like, I feel like I've known Ned my entire life, but I can't remember where I actually met him. And recently we just figured out, he was giving me a ride home from somewhere, and we just figured out that we're both from the East Coast and we're both kind of from that area. And we were like, that's why we feel like we've known each other our whole lives. And so they also, so what I love about Ethic is they believe great cider making starts in the orchard, similar to Ragged Hill. And so I love what he's doing with a lot of regenerative agriculture practices and creates really distinctive ciders that really are clean, classic expressions. Both of these makers tonight are very clean, classic expressions of kind of just what cider is without getting over manipulated and without doing a lot of crazy, funky things. But then they also do some fun things like rosé, or for Ned with Ethic, he does a scarlet as well. And so they always grow and source the highest quality organic fruit, which is not necessarily the cost-effective way to make cider, but he really has a very deep ethos about the right way to do things and the right thing to do to not only make beautiful, delicious ciders, but also to protect our environment and our land and our, this
Mother
planet.
Nature.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ned, I would love for you to talk a little bit about your story. We're going to sip on Montage, so you can talk about your story a little bit, and then maybe tell us a little bit about Montage specifically.
Great. Thank you, Suzanne and
Yeah.
Evan. It's great that you put this together. I wanted to say up front, with this situation we're in, one of the things we put together early on was sort of 3 C's of Ethic, which was cultivate, craft, and connect. And I got to say, like, this technology and what we've been able to do with connection is amazing. And it's a testament. I think the silver lining for a lot of us is that we all need connection. And this is really amazing to be able to do this. And I'm with my kids and my wife up here. That's not a fake background. That's a real background. That's actually our orchard behind us. I don't know if you can see it all up there. I'll stand up a minute behind us, but that's the orchard. We are exactly an hour from San Francisco. We're in Sebastopol, which was the apple growing county for California for many, many years. We purchased this land about 7 years ago. And what we were sort of interested in was, first was the land itself, and particularly the idea of sort of biodiverse growing and what we could do with it. So we kind of quickly got resources locally and tried to figure out, okay, what can we do with this land? We had apples and we had apple trees, but there was a way in which we wanted to grow them and raise them. And I think the thing that we sort of go back to in a lot of this conversation about terroir, because everybody's ciders are going to be different, ours are really about the land behind us and really the soil in which they grow. So quickly, what we sort of ground up on is that we don't till here. We have a cover crop every year. We've been doing a lot of work with NRCS, which is a national group that runs out of the agriculture group, which actually funds people to do this kind of growing and to do like more regenerative agriculture. So we were sort of excited about that part of it initially. And then what grew out of sort of the idea that we could really grow beautiful apples, and the taste, we could see that developing over the years that we've been doing this, that the apples really do reflect the quality and the health of the land. So that's been our story from the get-go, and Ethic really kind of came out of this story of what is the ethical way in which to tend your land. So these are kind of pictures of our orchard. We also do a lot of sourcing, learning, and sharing. As you can see, we have school groups that come up and help us plant trees. They actually learn a lot about our land management practices, so on and so forth. So I'm blessed to start with that we have a beautiful piece of land. Secondly, we got an ability to come here and sit with our family and be sequestered on a beautiful piece of land. So we're very, very thankful and blessed to be here at the moment, and also reconnecting with the land a little bit and knowing what it's showing us. So if anything in all this is really the idea, and I can just see, because I see what people are doing, is if I got to do anything, I have to go out and connect with some nature and land. Totally. And this is what everybody needs right now. And so it's sort of a real earning and learning to try to get out and do this. So we are in the middle of Sonoma County. We're in West County. It's very much of a Pinot country as well. So we've lost a little bit of share of the apple growing here to the Pinots, to the Pinot growing. We love Pinot as well. But there's been a resurgence up here. And we have about 20 makers within 10 miles of us. Some very big ones, very small ones, but they're all cider enthusiasts and people dedicated to making cider. So I just wanted to say that up front, and it's really great to see all these people we don't know, but it's so great to connect with you all this way and really slow down and focus on a little bit about what's important. And so we're excited that you're following through the third C, which is connection. So thank you for that.
That's
Yeah,
a that's a
totally.
great sentiment, Ned, and I thank you for bringing that up because it's something that I think we're all striving for right now, and it's something that's difficult for all of us to attain and to achieve. So I thank you for that recognition, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, and I keep joking that, one of the reasons I hope these live on past just this crisis that we're currently in is because I feel like, the way we all say that we stay connected is by scrolling each other's Facebook feeds and like seeing what people are doing. But like, this is such a better way to stay connected virtually, like than just like reading some text about what someone did this weekend, and instead getting on a video chat and like seeing their face and really talking and really connecting. And so I'm hopeful that, that there's going to be some good things that come out of all of this, and not just, negative things. And I'm hoping that, having everyone use Zoom a little bit more and figure out technology and get comfortable being on video, even if they're in their PJs and they have bedhead and all that kind of stuff, is one of the positive things that maybe comes out of this. So yeah, and I'm thrilled that you guys are up there and that's where you're sheltering in place up there, because I will say when we're trying to get out and get some exercise and be outside here in San Francisco, gosh, man, the Panhandle, we went for a walk and it's this beautiful park, but like, it was really hard to stay 6 feet away from people because there were so many people out walking. And so we were literally, there's paths on one side and paths on the other side and a big meadow in the middle. And we were just walking in the middle of the meadow because we were like, if we're on the paths, there's no way we're staying away from people. So it's even in a city, it's even hard to get nature right now because there's just so many people trying to do it. So I'm happy that you and your family are up there in your orchard and getting to kind of spread out a little bit during all of this.
Hey, Ned, somebody posted there with a question. Do you have hours that you're regularly open for people to come and visit? Dan, thanks for the question.
So that's a great question. So we jumped into cider, making cider, and launched it about 2.5 years ago. We didn't have approval for a tasting room, and we sort of got to production and we raced out, and Whole Foods, opened their doors. And so, honestly, the transition the last 3 years has been interesting because it's actually asked us to reset as well. It's been an interesting timing for us as a company. We didn't want to sacrifice quality, and we quickly saw that if you're going to be a big player in the cider world, and some of these are, it's very hard to manage the quality and the scale. And so that's a challenge for all craft makers. And I think Suzanne and Evan have highlighted these, us as producers, because there's a real sense of doing it right. And I think that's what we're trying to do. And I know Ragged Hill, I spent some time with Steve and both of them, and it was just great to connect and know that there's other people committed to quality and really doing it right at the right volume. So that's really something we had to learn. And so, the long story short is that we're moving sort of back to the farm, if you will. We actually are 3/4 of the way through our tasting room here. We had a barn here we inherited, and we're converting that quickly. So there's still some licensing to be done, but we hope to be able to bring people here and be able to have them step in and stop in and actually walk along the trees here and all the work we've done. So we're excited about that. But it's been an interesting journey of sort of like racing out and growing quickly, and then sort of saying, you know what, that's not where we want to go. And maybe it took that to do that. And maybe it even takes this kind of situation to realize, like, okay, what is really important at the moment? And we just wanted to continue to make good quality cider and really kind of spend our energy here at the orchard and, watching the changes day in and day out. So that's been our change. So the short term is that we can deliver to you. We actually are going to push out something quickly to anybody in San Francisco or along the 101 corridor. I don't want to exclude anybody from Oakland. We're happy to, 6-bottle order. We're happy to actually deliver it to your house, 6-foot distancing. But I think it's just, it's a connection for us because we just want to get our cider out. And a lot of it is just, giving and be able to people enjoy this. So I think it's part of what we want to do right now, given the situation. So if anybody's on this call, like, hey, I'd love to get 6 bottles, go on our website and just order for pickup. And then we can shoot you an email and say, okay, where do you live? And, we'll drive around with a little truck. And, part of that is our giving, and we want to do it. So,
That's
And
great,
yeah,
Ned. Thanks for
yeah.
doing that. Yeah.
Very cool.
And also, so you know, Ned actually does have pretty good distribution in Whole Foods, at least in the Bay Area. And so he is, you know, and that's often a challenge for small craft cider makers. Ah, they have a bottle of Ethic right there. Look, Kristen and Patrick.
Hey,
Nice.
Montage for the win.
Golden rule, I think.
Oh, that's right.
Golden
Yeah.
rule. Yeah.
We're drinking Montage.
We're drinking Montage.
Speaking of
yeah.
which.
Speaking of Montage, yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit, Ned, about Montage? And then
Yeah, Montage, and you guys have it back there, but Montage is really kind of a fun thing that we do. Every year, Montage is a little different. It comes from our orchard here, and we look at this as sort of an opportunity to showcase the best we have. And, you know, Steve alluded to growing cider fruit. A lot of this is quite new. The cider makers right now, probably everybody's planted some cider fruit in the last 5 years, but they're just now getting the fruit from that. So like Steve, we don't have a lot of this, but we tend to love to showcase this. So this is a small release we do every year, and we play around with what we think. Sometimes our cider styles, last year we did it on oak, which we wanted to see what the wood would do with it. This year we did a little bit of twist on it, and we put some quince on it. But Montage is made up of Wixons, which are really interesting. They're a West Coast fruit. I don't believe they developed them on the East Coast, but a lot of the cider fruit comes from the East Coast. But Wixons are ones that were developed out here, and they're phenomenal in our orchard. They do really well. They're short, little, tiny apples. They're very flavorful. They have a good kick on them. Their bricks are 18, sometimes 19, sometimes 20, and they're just really prolific growers here. So we've been able to get some Wixons out of our orchard. The other thing we've been, obviously, Gravitude and Gravenstein apples are a big part of this. This is a Russian, I believe the Russians brought them over during the fur trade, and they planted them here. And the story went that basically, sorry about the background, there goes a bird too. Basically what happened was the Russians brought over the Gravenstein apple, and they planted them here. And the story goes that they couldn't grow anything else because we have such gopher pressure here that everything else got eaten up, any vegetables they tried to grow. But the Gravenstein was pretty hardy and would grow down and put itself in the clay. And so we have Gravenstein apples up here, and that's kind of our local fruit that's amazing. And then the last one we have is a Nihu, which is a French varietal. And we have grown this actually from our friends Tilted Shed, Scott and Ellen. Some people may know them well here. They were kind of early pioneers in the cider business. They're right up the street from us. And they grafted some Nihu here, and that did phenomenally well. So again, very small fruit, very, very good on the bricks, has a tannic flavor to it, racy acidity. So these are kind of the platform of what we work with Montage. But every year is different. And the other thing we've had is golden russets have come in, and I know Steve mentioned that too. You know, russets have been really good here. You know, the other ones have not grown very well. So we're trying to figure out in the orchard, every land is different and where you grow. We have very high heats in the summer. We have low water. So we don't have the same growing conditions that Steve has, and different, but they probably have more pressure, different pressure in terms of pests and things like that. So we have a different climate out here, and we've high bricks. When I talk about bricks, these are the sugars that we get in our apples, and relatively we get anywhere from 14 to 18 to 20, which is quite high. So our alcohol ends up being, can be anywhere from 7.5% to 8.5%. So we tend to be higher on the alcohol percentage. So we let people know ours pack with a little punch in terms of alcohol, but generally speaking, that's kind of where we go. And the overall thing with Ethic quickly is that we are focused on fruit, individual fruit. And so what we do is we single harvest everything, we bring it in, and we single ferment everything. So, and often on different yeasts. So
it's pretty unique, right, Ned?
Yeah, very unique.
Yeah.
And it's really taking the hybrid of what winemakers have figured out here in Napa and Sonoma. And we worked with a few winemakers, and we really understood, yeast have a lot to do with flavor. So that's good. We'll use multiple kinds of yeast. They're all white wine yeasts. But also a blend is really about when we sit down and look at each one of the apples, and we taste through them as we make it. And that's really, it's a winemaking skill, really. But I think ciders contribute themselves to that as well, because a field blend, there's nothing wrong with a field blend, will tend to give you one dimension of a taste value. When you're fermenting different apples and you do it with yeast, you actually have some dynamics across the board that you can kind of work with. And so we kind of look at it as, you know, kind of just finding the way the fruit worked this year, how does it work, and how is it going to play into this cider? So that's the fun stuff. But it is winemaking, and you know, we get to work with we're growing about 12 to 15 different varietals of apples here. Not a lot of volume, but we use them as kind of a taste profile. So we don't have to add a lot of those cider fruit varietals into our base level, because they really shine and pull it out. So that's kind of fun.
That's great.
Thanks so much, Ned.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I love, you know, Ned, you and I have worked together a few times, and I love what you guys are doing. And I do want to showcase, they have a whole lineup of products. So they have Golden Rule, which is 100% golden delicious apples. Is that right, Ned?
Well, no, it's golden. So again, they're all blended, but golden Rule is about 85%. Then it has Gravenstein in the background, and then actually has Rhode Island Greening, which is a great apple to work with.
Also, good food award winner.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's the one that Evan really loves, because it's like, it's honestly like a great substitute for champagne or bubbly. Like it really drinks like a champagne, and like just is really bright and crisp and delicious. And then there's Gravitude, which is Gravenstein's.
Yeah, that's the Gravenstein apple. So that's 90% Gravenstein. We put a little bit of Rhode Island in that one as well to kind of give it a little bit of twist. And then we put, what do we put in the Golden Rule? I'm trying to remember what the other one we have in there. I think it's, we put, I'm looking at the apple and I'm forgetting what it is. It's in the back here. But it is, but yeah, that's a Gravitude, and that's really showcases our Gravenstein apple here, and that's been a big favorite locally. So that's part of the appeal of that one as well. And then you got this is our rosé, and this is kind of fun. We do that on a base of Gravitude as a cider, and then we pick blackberries and raspberries from up here. We freeze them, and then we cold soak them on top. It's really fun to watch how that infuses into the cider. It's got a bouquet and a kind of a real raspberry flavor, but very dry. It's not sweet. So it's really kind of a tart product.
Yeah, both the Rosé from Ragged Hill and the Scarlet from Ethic are both similar in that, like, tart, kind of dry, but like really refreshing, similar to how you would drink a rosé wine, honestly. And they're just really fun, and we just love.
A lot of fun food pairing options with that kind of stuff. Because it's got that bracing acidity, but it's also got that levity to the aromatic profile, and it makes it very versatile. Yeah.
And the montage that we're sipping on tonight is, it's funny, when Ned was doing one of my Meet the Maker sessions, this was a brand new cider for him, and he came over to me and he was like, "You're gonna love this one," because he knows that I love Spanish ciders. And it's a little bit more on the like slightly funkier side, slightly more like I don't know, just like not quite barnyardy. It doesn't go quite that far, but it does have a little bit more of that funkiness.
I don't know.
You, sommelier, no. You do what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I'd love to hear. Let's hear it.
That funkiness is not, it's not pronounced. I don't think it would be like off-putting like some of the Spanish ciders that you've shown me.
That I love, that Evan's like, I don't know.
Like, that's a little far, but there's kind of like this little like aged cheese kind of thing that's underlying it. And maybe it's the texture too, because it's
it does feel a little like more viscous, or like a
it's
little
definitely
thicker.
a little bit more mouthfeel than the traditional dry that we were just drinking. But it's really fun to have. I mean, I loved and still love eating cheese and apples.
Yeah,
who doesn't? But that kind of underlying cheese component that this has just gives it some complexity that I don't think you normally would expect to find in cider. I'm drawn to this one a lot.
Yeah,
I was going to say that what's interesting about ciders, and when, like wine, I mean, we set these ciders up. We do use a residual level sulfites in here to stabilize sort of the product. But what's interesting is I go back and taste these ciders, and they're evolving. They're definitely evolving and changing, and that's kind of cool. That's kind of the way cider is. And people ask me, like, is this something you need to drink right away? And no, you can set it. I wouldn't say for years, but the way these ciders have aged and the way we've gone back and tasted them after 3 or 4 years is like, wow, they've taken on a new dimension, a new skill. So for us, it's been really fun to watch that.
Great. Yeah.
Hey, I just wanted to thank you, Ned. And I just want to take the opportunity here real quick to kick this back to Ann and Steve real quick, because I want to give you the opportunity to plug your hours and when you're open for people that might be close by on the East Coast and want to come visit you at Ragged Hill, since that question came up for Ned from someone that's local to.
So things are definitely a little bit in flux right now.
Of course. Yeah. So in normal situations, maybe.
Right. We were planning to open up at the Orchard this May. Our tasting room up there is in the middle of the Orchard, and we were thinking we'd have a big opening with apple blossom. And right now, I'm not sure how that's going to work. Right now, everything, like in San Francisco, everything in Massachusetts is shut down, except for essential services. So we're trying to work through that and figure out if we can do some sort of, people can come up to the Orchard and take a walk in the Orchard, practice social distancing, and pick up bottles to go. We're trying to figure out what that looks like.
Sure.
And we do have a couple of farmers markets that we were supposed to do this year. And there has been some guidance that the farmers markets will be able to move forward to support local farms and get people in touch with some good local food. So right now, the best way to get our cider is to order it online. And we are offering a discount code right now, that Crafty Cask 15. We're doing a flat rate shipping for 6 bottles or more, which turns out to be a really, really good deal, because shipping is kind of what kills you in alcohol sales online.
And Anne, I think I think the promo code is just Crafty 15, right?
Oh yeah, Crafty 15. Yeah,
that's right.
And then if you follow us on Instagram at Ragged Hill Cider or Facebook, we will be updating with our hours and what we're doing moving forward.
Cool. Good to know.
Great. Yeah. But when, if you're on the East Coast, if you're out there, they have a beautiful property, and I've been there myself, and it's quite fun. And we can't wait for Ned's tasting room, or kind of how that comes to life, what that looks like for that to open as well. Because I've known Ned for a while now, and actually we live about 10 minutes away from each other in the city, and I don't live far from where his orchard is, but I've never been up there, which feels crazy to me. So I'm excited to get up there and explore and see what they're doing as well.
Yeah, I would definitely like to come and see the orchard, Ned.
Yeah,
that would be really cool.
For sure. All right, so I don't know if we promised you guys this was going to be an hour, but if we did, we lied. So sorry.
Sorry.
I don't know if we actually had an end time.
You guys have somewhere to go, someplace to be.
I have to probably sign off, but I have family here. But thank you both. And again, I go back to just all these people online and doing this. It's just great to see everybody. I wish everybody health and safety. And we'll get through this. I mean, this is the thing, but I think it's really cool to have people signing up and showing up, and we'd love to see you in real life and real person after this. So
absolutely.
Thank you both for doing that.
Thank you so much, Ned. And thank you, Anne and Steve, too. I know it's late there on the East Coast, so if you need to sign off, we're going to do a little wrap up real quick here, but thank you so much for coming. We'll share some more of your promo codes. We're going to send out an email with all the details as well. So if people want to, buy things and all that. But yeah, it's really fun to connect with everyone, and we're thrilled that all of you are here, and we would love it if you had a good time tonight, if you could share this with your friends and share the link to sign up, because we'd love to build this community and grow this community so that we all just have these standing Thursday night happy hours on our schedule, and join when it's alcohol you like, when it's a maker you're interested in, or just join because you want to hang out and have fun and meet new people to geek out with about things.
We'd love to have you, and we hope to be doing this on at least a weekly basis going
if not
forward.
More. Yeah, we have a lot of makers who are interested. We're going to be doing wine next week, and then we also have I think it's for April 16th. We have Eden Ciders and Botanist and Barrel already scheduled for April 16th.
For those of you who are cider lovers.
Yeah, another cider one. out there.
Yeah.
And that's going to be really fun because they both make a pet nat cider, which is pretty rare to find pet nat ciders. Do you want to explain what pet nat means?
If you think of champagne as kind of the pinnacle of sparkling wine, pet nat would be what it came from, and eventually they learned how to get the stuff that makes it sparkling out of the bottle before they sold it to you, and that stuff is generally yeast. And so the way pet nats are made is this ancestral style. It's actually commonly referred to also as method ancestral. And the yeast that causes the fermentation, the yeast that causes the carbonation is not removed from the bottle before it's received by you. And so there's a little bit of sediment in these bottles, and they're not quite as carbonated because carbonation begins, and then before it finishes, the liquid is transferred to the bottle and it's sealed. So a little bit of the sediment gets in there, and carbonation continues, creating the carbonation from fermentation.
Yeah, so we're excited because pet nat ciders are a little more unique and rare. They're a little more common in wine.
Yeah.
And both of these producers who are going to have on both make a pet nat style. So it'll be really fun to do a side-by-side comparison. And so we'll make sure to send that out to you because since that's April 16th, it's a little ways out. You actually can pre-order those if you want. And so you can be drinking along with us the things that we're going to be drinking, and we can make this a little bit more of a virtual tasting for that. And that's what we're hoping to do more of going forward. Once we get our calendar filled, you'll be able to check in and see, what do I like? What am I interested in? Let me pre-buy some, support these makers, and do the virtual tasting right.
So you don't have to be envious
of what we're drinking. That's right. That's right.
You'll have it too.
So huge thank you to all of you guys for joining us for our inaugural virtual tasting session. We're super excited to do this. And big thank you to Ned and Ann and Steve from Ragged Hill
thank you so
and
much for being
Ethic. That was great. So a reminder again, show your support, buy some bottles. It's kind of the best we can do right now. We can't go visit. We can't do anything else. So if you like cider, if you enjoy cider, stock up. We might be indoors for a little while. And then, you know, again, if you've had a great time tonight and you feel like tipping your hosts, we're on Venmo at the Crafty Cask.
Sure.
And then, so.
And share this if you had a good time too.
That's probably the most important thing.
It's been great to see so many faces that are familiar, but we'd really
love
love
to see new faces.
Your friends and your friends' friends.
Yeah.
And let this grow.
And build a community. And we'd love to build a community during this time where we really need it so that we can sustain this when maybe we don't need it as much, you know, and so that we can just have a fun virtual community. And like, it's great to see Chaka, who we've never seen you virtually online, but like your family.
I've seen you once or twice online.
I haven't, you know, and so it's nice to see you guys. And Max, like you live up the road and we barely see you in person. And so it's like, it's nice to be able to do this from the comfort of our own homes and our PJs or whatever, and get to hang out together. So I'd love to be doing more of this. I think that's, what else do we have to say? Anything else? Yeah, we'll send out an email with a summary of everything, but otherwise, if there's any questions, any thoughts, anything, are you keeping an eye on the chat? I'm not.
Oh, Max just invited us to make cider from his trees.
Ooh, we've been wanting to make cider, actually.
Thanks, Max.
Yeah. I bet Ned would be interested to know what kind of apples you have.
I would be interested. I bet Max would be interested to know what kind of. Do you know what kind of ciders you have?
Or apples you have? Gravenstein. Yeah, those make delicious ciders.
Cool.
Best virtual happy hour yet. Nerding out with experts.
Hey,
Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks, Patrick.
Tell your friends, spread the love, support these craft makers. They really deserve it. We'll throw the links in here again, but they're going to be in the email. So
and drink more cider.
Says the wine guy. Yay.
Yes.
Bye, everyone. We'll hang out here for a little while. People want to unmute themselves and just chit chat, but.